listeners, and welcome to another video. I'm Cara and I help advanced English learners fall back in love with their favourite series by helping them to break free from the subtitles. So this week I wanted to focus a bit on different types of series and why some are harder to understand than others. And the two main genres that I want to compare are comedies and drama, because I think the type that you choose will help you in getting subtitle free more quickly. So I've worked with a few students over the past year who wanted to understand crime or detective series. So I've worked on Chicago PD with one person and True Detective with another person. Sort of police shows aren't my favorite thing to watch, but I don't mind from time to time watching them. Sometimes they can be enjoyable. Now, I've noticed a couple of problems with this type of series. So firstly, the lead characters are often men. Now, that's not a problem in itself, but the thing is, often these men have very hard to understand voices. They sound like they've been drinking and smoking all their lives. I think it's kind of the stereotype of the stressed out police detective or police inspector, that their voice is all kind of hard to understand. And they speak in this kind of, I would describe it as a hoarse whisper, so kind of like this, right, with this kind of rough voice but low volume that makes them hard. And they don't articulate very clearly. Plus, in these types of series, there is quite a lot of specialist vocabulary related to crime and police work. So here's a quick example for you from Chicago PD.
We know anything new?
Told my cell phone's a dead end, Sergeant.
Hey, you close on those passwords.
So the main character here is really, really tricky to understand. I'm not actually 100% sure what he just said. I would have to watch it again. Here's a scene from True Detective, which I've been working on recently with someone.
What's going on with you, man? Salter asked about it. Iberia called. You've been going around bothering people, trying to open up old cases. I am working. I have things to do. So type the report, man.
So here you've got two characters who speak with this kind of low, especially Matthew McConaughey's character has this really kind of low, gravelly voice that's really hard to understand. Now, obviously, once you get familiar with this type of show, familiar with the characters and how it's structured, it gets a bit easier. And, if you love detective shows, then, of course, you'll be motivated to understand and to work on watching them without the subtitles. But it brings me to kind of a more general point about dramas, because dramas are often going to be harder to understand than comedies for various reasons. Because in dramas, the dialogue is really important to the plot. So you're going to get a lot of dialogue, and it's going to, it's going to sound realistic, because what they're going for is kind of realistic sounding discussion between the characters. Also, dramas are really focused on the relationships between the characters and kind of the psychology between them, and the dialogue is a device to kind of go deep and to understand them. So if we look at one of my favorite dramas, you'll see what I mean. So one of my favorites of recent years is The Americans. It's very hard to find clips on YouTube if you're outside the US. So we're going to look at the trailer for season 5. One of the things that makes this series really good is the relationship between the two main characters, and that develops through the dialogue that they speak to each other. So the series, The Americans, if you don't know it, is about two Soviet Union spies who live undercover in the US pretending to be normal citizens. So it's kind of, there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of psychology. I'll let you listen so you can hear what I mean.
Other you, I don't know at all. Tuesday. The center is concerned about you. You've seen too much. You've done too much.
You know something about this that I don't.
feel like there's something he's not telling us.
Okay, so we just saw Elizabeth and Philip, who are the two main characters. So yeah, in the series, the goal is to make, you know, their conversations sound realistic, and otherwise everyone else is kind of mysterious and speaking quietly. But the point is, it's to kind of sound realistic. So if you are kind of maybe new to the subtitle freedom journey, or you're wondering what you could watch in English, then I don't know, I would recommend comedies rather than dramas. So there are several things in comedies that will make your life easier. So it's less about the dialogue and the relationships between the characters, it's more about the jokes. The dialogues are going to sound less realistic because you know, the point is for the series to be funny, not to sound like a real conversation. You have what's called canned laughter in the background. So this is where when there's a joke, you hear the laughter of an audience. So you know where the jokes are, you know that was supposed to be funny, even if you didn't understand it. The characters are a bit kind of one-dimensional often. So, you know, don't expect sort of deep character psychology coming through in the dialogues. That's not the point in a comedy. The dialogue is just kind of there to tell the jokes and to move the plot along, tell the story. And of course, in comedies, this is where you will hear catchphrases from certain famous characters. So, you know, how you doing from Joey and Friends, or Bazinga from Sheldon in Big Bang Theory. So that's what I'm going to show you a little bit of just now.
Pick up a worm and put him on this hook.
Fine. I'm no expert, but I think the hook has to go through the worm. Fine. Sorry, Mr. Worm. Sherm the worm.
Don't name him, just jab a hook in his face.
Okay, so here you've got all the classic features of a sitcom. So you've got the canned laughter in the background. You have the familiar characters. So you had on the right, you had Penny, who's the good-looking girl. Then you have the three nerdy guys, because it's Big Bang Theory. You had, you know, the joke about, you know, the worm, and I can't remember the name of that character. He was scared of the worm. So you've got all the classic kind of sitcom codes. And you could see there that instead of being oriented around dialogue, it was all oriented around action. So even if you're not sure what they're saying, you can see that there's the whole activity with putting the worm on the hook, and the facial expressions and everything to help you out, rather than two people sitting there talking and you're not exactly sure what's going on. Okay. So character-based comedies like sitcoms are good because you know, you've got you see the same characters every week in the same context. So you know, you could watch Friends, even though you know how I feel about it. You could also watch something like How I Met Your Mother, which is kind of similar to Friends, but I enjoyed it a lot more. Recent sitcoms I've enjoyed include People of Earth and Man Seeking Woman. And there are loads of classic sitcoms that you could watch. So last time I mentioned some series from the 60s and 70s, and then some more recent ones, well, more recent, but not recent. So from kind of like the 80s and 90s that I really enjoyed growing up watching were Red Dwarf, Spaced, Only Fools and Horses, Father Ted, The Office, and Black Books. You could also watch comedy sketch shows. So those are the shows, you know, where you have a collection of short sketches, just a few minutes each. So in those sketches, you will see the same characters from week to week, and usually like the joke is kind of the same every time. Even if the situation is a little different, it's the same character and the same kind of joke in the same format. So it's good for getting used to that particular joke, that particular character. So some examples are shows like Little Britain, The Fast Show, or Big Train. So I found a sketch from Big Train, which I think you'll appreciate.
This Excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry. Do you speak English?
No, I don't. Sorry.
My car's broken down, and I wondered if you could tell me where to find a garage.
Well, that's wasted on me. I don't understand what you're saying.
I don't speak any English at all.
Not a word. No. It's one of those things really. I wish I paid more attention in school. But excuse me. Sorry. Do you speak any English?
English? No. What's the problem?
I don't know. I can't understand.
Hi. My car's broken down, and I need to find a garage.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so it kind of continues along the same lines if you want to watch the whole sketch. If you need more inspiration for sketch shows to watch, then I'm linking to a list of 40 shows under this video in an article. And then finally, there is kind of a compromise between the comedies and dramas, which is the comedy drama or dramedy, mixture of the words comedy and drama. So some famous examples include Desperate Housewives, Gilmore Girls, or Ally McBeal. So comedy dramedies, are usually more realistic than comedies. You don't have that canned laughter in the background like we just heard in this sketch or on Big Bang Theory. The kind of gags, jokes are a bit less obvious. They tend to last longer, so 45 minutes to an hour rather than 20 to 30 minutes for a classic sitcom or sketch show. And the relations between the characters and the character development are more important. So you will get more scenes of dialogue rather than action because we're kind of getting in a bit deeper into the characters and their psychology. So that can be a nice alternative as well, but more challenging than just comedies. And, I wanted to give a final mention to reality TV shows. So reality TV can be tough because you've got real people speaking how they normally speak. But that's a great way to expose yourself to how native speakers really sound on the street if you're trying to get used to native speech because you're living abroad or because you have to interact with native speakers. So you can check out my post on that from a couple of weeks ago for more information. So what about you? What types of series do you find hardest to understand? Do you avoid dramas or do you find them easy to understand? Do you prefer comedies? Let me know and give me some suggestions because I'm always on the lookout for series that are not too hard, or I'm interested in knowing which ones are challenging so that I can take a look and analyze them for you and explain what's difficult. Okay, thanks very much for watching and thanks for your comments. Bye.